Ladies and gentlemen, I'm recording this video on September 14th, 2025, and we are 1 day away, and more specifically, we are just one chess game away from witnessing Hans Niemann in the Candidates Tournament, and the Candidates ultimately crowns the next challenger to the World Championship. Let me explain. We're at the Grand Swiss, a tournament being held in Uzbekistan. Those of you that have been following my recaps, this is recap number 10. Those of you that have not been following my recaps, buckle up. The top two finishers of the Grand Swiss make it to the Candidates. There's just one problem. Going into the final couple of rounds, about 10 people are fighting for that spot. And I will be recapping some of the most important games, including the game by Hans Niemann, today. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to brief you what to expect tomorrow. You may want to not pay so much attention in school or work, because it is going to be legendary. Here we go. That is the introduction. So, going into this round, Hans Niemann has 6 points. He's playing Praggnanandhaa, who actually has 5.5. The way that worked is there was an odd number of people with 6 and 6.5s, and they were all playing against each other, and Hans got what's called downfloated. So he got downfloated to the person with the highest rating in the 5.5 score group, 2,785. Praggnanandhaa. You could argue this is a pretty brutal pairing, considering there were other players that were lower rated, but had a slightly higher score total. No matter. Hans sits down, Pragg plays the Sicilian defense, and we have the Ras Salima. Right? Now, Pragg doesn't have that much to play for. He could play the role of spoiler with a 5.5 score, because I don't think 2 wins for Pragg are going to get him into first place, but it's very close. He could probably qualify to the Candidates again via the circuit. Don't worry if I'm saying things you don't know about. Bishop g7, rook e1, all these moves very standard. White is waiting a little while to take the knight on c6, but he's not going to be able to wait much longer because the knight just simply leaves. Knight takes, pawn takes, and Hans plays this line, pawn to c3. The idea is quite straightforward. He wants to be taken so that he would then seize control of the center completely. E6 is played by Pragg. Knight a3 is obviously the only way you can develop your knight because this pawn is not being captured. So the bishop is kicked down, and now an interesting move, bishop to f1. A lot of people might be confused. Why on earth the bishop returned to the home square? It has no other comfortable square. On e2, it blocks the rook. On d3, it blocks the pawn. On c4, it blocks where the knight could go and could potentially be a target. It could theoretically go to a4. I mean, I kind of understand this move, but in many of these positions, the bishop is actually quite comfortable on the f1 square for now. Knight e7. Hans takes on d4. And now something really strange happens. And it's really strange, but it's the best line. It's the best line of the computer. Black just castles, so he doesn't take the pawn, because if you take the pawn, I will attack the bishop, and then I will get my other pawn in the middle. And actually, the computer just says white is just sort of choking on gluttony here, like you're in your own way. The knight goes to c2, the knight goes to c6. Now I would like to win the pawn back, but now Hans is like, actually, Pragg, you probably should have taken the pawn, because I just have an extra pawn now. We have a trade, the knight goes to d4, and white just goes d3. Now, again, this looks a little bit ridiculous. Like, white has an extra pawn, but it is a doubled isolated pawn on the d-file. So these are the 3 pawns on the d-file, and white has an extra one of them. Again, I don't quite understand why you would play some 12, 13, 14 moves and just give away a pawn to the opponent and be like, well, I have compensation for it. But I don't understand chess at this level, and obviously they know something that I don't, and the average rating of this matchup is like 2760, so, you know, I'm just going to pay attention. d6, Hans trades the knights and just has an extra pawn. Now, here's the good news for black. The position is actually very difficult for white to do anything. Like, you're not going to move either of the pawns. Everything else is the same. White just has an extra pawn, but it's sort of in the way. The bad news for black is that you just are down a pawn. Like, proving your position is good while being down a pawn, always in the back pocket, it's also not so simple. Now you should play queen f6. Okay, there's nothing really wrong with bishop d7. Bishop e3, we're trying to trade. Now, you obviously shouldn't trade, because then I can improve my pawn structure, and then I would defend my pawn completely, and then I would just really be up a pawn, and it wouldn't be any sort of long-term liability. You know, the real problem here is that Hans is just making a bunch of easy moves. You can't even take on b2 because I will get my rook to c7. So this, now rook c4, and again, I'm just sort of constantly threatening, you know, to put some pressure. Now, again, what I don't get here is why not take the rook and then take the pawn? There is a line here. Rook c4, okay? Here. Black wins the pawn back. Rook b1 going for this pawn. Bishop c3 attacking the queen. And now this pawn's hanging, but the move b5 is very nice. cb5, ab5, bishop b5, rook b5. And now you can play something like rook a8. Even the move bishop d4 is very nice with ideas of back rank checkmate, right? Like on the e1 square, if everything is traded. Pragg doesn't like this, though. He doesn't go for this sequence and instead trades like this. And now Hans gives back the pawn at the right moment, but has completely activated his position. And he will win a pawn. He's going to win a pawn. And he gets the pawn right back. And this is a very different situation because now Hans is up a pawn. It's a very important outside pawn. Black has two weaknesses, and white has a very active bishop. And very quickly, Hans also builds up a massive lead on time. Pragg only has a minute. Bishop d3 is possible. Queen d4 check. The queen needed to defend the rook. f6. And now a3 defending the rook. Pragg has 50 seconds to play 10 moves, or he will lose the game on time. Bishop to e2 is a mistake. h3, okay, just the patient move. h4 also was strong. h3, queen goes to c5. Hans centralizing the queen, defending the rook from coming here. Queen c1 check. And Pragg blunders. Pragg goes for aggressive counterplay with rook c1. And after queen e3, white is just completely winning. White is completely winning because you have the bishop defending the king and kicking out the queen, and you have rook coming to e4. And when the rook goes to e4, it's going to e7, at which point you will absolutely brutalize the black king and win all the pawns. Bishop back to b5, rook e4, king h8. And ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you the co-leader. Hans Niemann has jumped into a tie for first place, pending a couple of other results. So I'm now going to show you some of the other most important games of the round, and if Hans Niemann will just be tied for first period, or if he will have to now win his last round against one of the people that has 7.5. Hans has 7 points. He has 7 points. He's on a massive winning streak in the second half of this tournament. Pragg losing, obviously all chances for first are gone, but to be honest, they were kind of gone even before I think this game started. Now we've got a couple of extremely important games to go through. So on the first board, we had Firouzja Giri. Now, again, on the surface, you think Firouzja, former 2800, and Giri, old man. No, Anish is a problem. He's been 2800 consistently, and I would argue his openings are better than Alireza's. Like he just has, I think, deeper preparation and a little bit more experience. But having said that, Alireza is also a problem. I mean, he's 2800. So Alireza plays a sideline of the Sicilian defense. What's funny is that I once made a course about this. Now we have the knight going to d4, knight f3, e6, and white is just giving away the bishop. So knight b5, a6, and Alireza plays a move I've not seen. This is super provocative stuff. Like you go back to c3, and then black goes b5, bishop b7, and black gets the bishop pair. White gets a very big center. It's actually a super, super interesting and back and forth Sicilian. Alireza, though, puts the knight on a3, which I've not seen. I have not seen this. And now some interesting stuff goes down, okay? So black goes knight f6. Now the best line is e5. Alireza plays e5, knight d5, and now you can either play c4 and d4, or just d4 straight away. Alireza goes d4 straight away, pawn takes, queen takes, b6. Right, the idea is bishop b7, targeting the knight, the queen, if it ever ends up in the middle of the board. Now there's a few lines here, couple of lines. You can bring the knight to c4, try to get to d6. You can play bishop g5. You can also play knight g5, knight e4. So you can reposition this knight and try to get the knight here. And together they can gallop into the d6 square. White has many ideas. Firouzja goes queen e4. So he pins the knight to the rook. Now black here should play rook b8, but instead he goes bishop b7. Okay? And now we have c4. So Giri spends 30 minutes on the move bishop b7 and plays the move c4. Okay? And now knight c3. Now, for reasons I don't understand on game review, this is given a question mark. I think the computer is just nuts. I don't, maybe there's, I don't know what it's seeing, but basically this is a pure sacrifice of a piece, not the knight, but the bishop. And I think this is what Giri saw. I don't think that you can like not take the sacrifice, because then the knight would come right back. And then if you try to kick it away, the knight goes here, and then it's just very comfortable. So I'm not exactly sure why the computer thinks that there is anything in this position. But if you take rook b8, queen a6, and after spending some time here, Alireza Firouzja realizes the queen is trapped. And this is just the best that he's going to get. And the players shuffle their pieces, and they make a draw. The only thing that might be possible here is playing some sort of bishop to g5 move. But this is still a draw. Rook b7, bishop d8, bishop a3, b8, king d8, this position's still equal. So this game ended sort of before it started, and you could kind of tell the players didn't enjoy this, because now Hans is tied with them. The only person that can pass one of these two is the winner of this game, Keymer, Bluebaum. And this game was wild. Okay, so Vincent Keymer plays his favorite opening. Like, this dude is one of the best ready practitioners in the world. He plays 4 very simple moves. And now White has to decide, is he playing a neo-Catalan, some b3 thing, some pure Catalan? Like, what's he going to do, right? So d3, and now a huge sideline. Not c4, not e4 and King's Indian, knight c3. Knight c3 is this new popular idea. It's a very modern idea. The best way for black to play here is to generally put, you know, some sort of good pressure on d4 to try to play c5, knight c6, d4. If you play d4 straight away, it's not knight b5, it's knight e4, a completely counterintuitive move, trying to get a trade of knights and blocking the light squared bishop on the diagonal. Like, optically, this just looks idiotic, but this actually is completely fine. And Keymer, e3, takes, and goes knight back to d2, and now he begins to work. So Vincent Keymer puts on his best surgeon outfit, nice little gown, nice little, you know, surgeon cap, and he's like, all right, time to operate. Time to operate on Bluebaum. b6, trying to put the bishop here. e5, opening up the bishop. The bishop counterattacks the rook, right? Rook slides over. Now we kick out the knight. This pawn is controlling that knight. This bishop is not particularly strong. Queen a4 is an attack on the bishop, which now has to leave. And after queen a4, we also can rotate the queen over this way, as well as knight c4 and take control of the d file, which Vincent Keymer very promptly does. Over the next few moves, c3, queen a4, queen g4. Now this is weak. So you have a4, knight b3 together can put pressure, knight e4 as well. There it is. Vincent Keymer is just simply outplaying Bluebaum like every single move. King to h8. Now you go queen h5 and generate an attack. Absolutely. And this is the strongest position that Vincent has that he could have possibly dreamt of. The continuation here for White, that is the best, is knight to g5. You can also throw in pawn takes, of course, because you open up the... But knight g5, because you get the bishop. Black will have to take this, and then you will take it, and you will have a bishop pair, and you'll put pressure on this side of the board. For whatever reason, Vincent goes here. Sorry, not that move. I already said that move was possible. Instead of knight g5, he goes here. But this is not the best move because you're not actually trading off the bishop pair. So even though you have an advantage, a very pure advantage with knight g5, which, you know, knight g5 is a move you can play by hand, and then you take with a bishop and you put the bishop here, you put pressure on the pawn. He goes here. So his advantage begins slipping already because now this is actually not such an easy position. It looks like White is just crashing in, but then here Vincent makes another mistake. All right, in this position, he needs to put the bishop on f4 or on c1 or on something where this rook can continue to see this pawn. And he goes here. And that's very important because now the rook can no longer see this pawn and Bluebaum immediately equalizes because, right, this pawn is not hanging in any line now. Rook a8, black has completely turn the tables. Like, I mean, Vincent had a very straightforward advantage. He actually played completely flawlessly in the first 20 moves, but I don't know if it's nerves. You know, I don't know why he didn't go knight g5, because knight g5 just feels like just sort of this automatic move. And now Bluebaum is just chilling. I mean, he's cruising. Both guys have 10 moves to make to the time control. Bluebaum, in fact, even looks more active than his counterpart, rook b2. Let's try to trade off some pawns. But Vincent is 2760 for a reason. And suddenly the pressure is back. Time is ticking, and Bluebaum makes a mistake. Instead of taking with the bishop and inviting in the knight, he should have went for counterplay with the pawn, because he goes for this position, back-to-back mistakes. And before you know it, rook a6 is coming and knight e4 is coming, and nobody in black's position can actually defend the f6 pawn. So Vincent Keymer is back in the driver's seat. He plays knight to e4. There's nothing for black. f5 looks decent, but it simply weakens the position too much, right? Knight d6, right? And I mean, even with the rook on a6. So king g6, rook a6. Here, Bluebaum is shaking his head on camera. I mean, he is distraught. Like, he knew that he made a full comeback. But now Vincent picks up the pawn on f6, and Vincent goes to c6, and in all likelihood, you're going to lose these two pawns, and it's going to be these three versus these two, which is a winning endgame. It's a winning endgame because you're up a pawn, but it's mostly a winning endgame because black's pawns are terrible. Like, in the long run, white is simply going to convert it. You don't have to swap the pawns. Like, the computer here for white actually just wants to go king f3, king e3, king d3. It wants to walk over. Vincent, of course, not a machine, goes for this endgame instead of just walking the king over. Might have been the best way. And now, again, it's just like 3-on-2. Vincent, once again, after taking off his surgery gown, previously, puts it back on, and now it's time to go to work. It's an extremely difficult endgame to defend. You'll notice that you're constantly being pushed back. I mean, one of these pawns is simply going to fall, and black is losing again. Black is losing again. You get the knight centralized. The knight, instead of going to c3, could have gone to f6. Black's only counterplay is with the e-pawn. He goes to c3, rook b7. And yeah, I mean, white is winning here, but you need to do this the right way. So, like, you have to get to the pawn the right way. Vincent could have played knight f6 and done it like this. He would have just had to been a little bit careful. All right, but he went back to c3. At this point, the computer is actually, it's trying to repeat the position, put the knight back, give a check on b6. The king should be back always in the endgame. You should try to push the king as far back as possible. And here's something completely unbelievable happens. Vincent Keymer went here. That should be given 2 question marks, not 1, given the scale of the endgame. And I'm not saying that because I don't like Vincent. Vincent Keymer blundered knight takes g3. A move sent in from the chess gods themselves. A move that looks completely unfathomable, but the pawn can't take, and if the king takes, this is a fork. And you simply get into a drawn rook endgame. The reason this is winning is because you have knights, and there are more pawns. But rook and 2 versus rook and 1 is probably a draw. And it depends on the pawns, but white has the worst pawns possible. Knight takes g3, just simply unbelievable. Judith Polgar was commentating the game and I mean, almost just fell out of her chair. And Vincent Keymer tries some tricks, 2-on-1, but this is just a draw. There is no way to win this with white. These pawns cancel out. This pawn is not ever going to promote. And some checks later, and just unfathomable. It was +4. This is a +4 position for Vincent Keymer to win. And if he won this game, he would have 7.5 points. He would be half a point ahead of the field. Now, I'm not saying he would have clinched the spot. He could lose in the last round, but heartbreak. And in this position to, play knight g5 and secure the 2 bishops, play a position that looks maybe something like this. Just sort of 2 bishops forever, putting pressure on the black position. Nobody says that you automatically win this game, but Vincent had it, and he needs to bounce back because, yeah, I mean, the stakes could not be higher. Now, I have a couple of more games. These are very, very important games because, again, the other players also count for these score groups. And then I will tell you about the tie breaks and what to expect. So, Abhimanyu Mishra versus Mishra and Vachier-Lagrave. We have 4-knight Sicilian. Here is the good news. This is a very theoretical opening, and Abhimanyu is a young guy with an excellent memory and obviously playing at the peak of his level. So he probably knows all the theory. He goes takes, e5, knight d5, knight e4, queen c7, f4, queen b6, c4, bishop b4, check, king e2. All of this is theory. I promise. It looks like a bomb cloud. It's not. It's a really, really absurd line. And he plays like this. Both guys obviously have memorized basically everything here. And after some 20-something moves, literally every single piece was traded. This is the 30th move of the game, and the game is a draw. So sometimes in these ultra sharp openings where the game is on a knife's edge, if you know everything, you kill the game. The good news is Abimanyu and MVL are actually still in the running. The problem is, unlike Giri and Firouzja, who drew their game also in a very strange Sicilian, these guys are half a point behind the leaders. So they decided not to take any risk. They both now have 6.5. So Vincent and Bluebaum both have 7. Giri and Firouzja both have 7. Niemann has 7. Both of these guys have 6.5. And one more completely unbelievable hero of the day. Well, folks, it's a Catalan. It's Andy Woodward, who recently was the youngest grandmaster in the world until he was taken. That spot was taken from him by Erdomush. Knight d4, takes. And he plays this type of Catalan where he is down a pawn, but he has a very powerful light squared bishop. Great opening, by the way, for advanced players. Even intermediate, honestly. Catalan is a torturous opening. And Parham is in a situation where he was leading this tournament for like 6 rounds, but that literally means nothing. Like, it just truly doesn't mean anything. Because there are 5 rounds to go, and if you fall into a situation of pressure, which he has here, you got to decide, like, do I play for a win? I'm playing a 25-50 Woodward. He could be underrated. How much risk do I want to take? I got news for you. It doesn't really matter how much risk you want to take. Because in this game, Andy Woodward played like his middle name was Stockfish. Look at the position for white. Black cannot leave this entire half of the board. And when you cannot use half the board, I mean, you simply will lose. And Andy Woodward in this game was just a monster. He didn't let Parham move his light squared bishop until the 30th move. And by the time Parham moved it, there was a blockade of pawns and simply a matter of time before I break this down. F4 for counterplay. D7, not the best move, actually. Woodward, to beat your first 2700 and then, some other 2700s, you got to have flawless technique. Rook b4 was the best move to try to get the rook more active and also take the pawn on a4. He goes d7. Now after FG, bishop f5 is the only move that doesn't lose immediately. Taking this pawn is a mistake because rook b7 and rook back to b3. Sacrificing a rook for the bishop, but these 2 pawns are devastating. Bishop d5 is devastating. And there's just one check, but it is not good enough. Queen a8, lights out, rook a8, you queen, or even take. It doesn't particularly matter. And the game is over. Actually, queening, I think, just leads to mate. So, yeah, that's probably for the best. Andy Woodward just beat Parham Maghsoodloo. Andy Woodward has 6.5 out of 10. Andy Woodward has 4 wins against 2660, 2650, 2744 Levan Ranyan. He beat Levan Aroni in the last round. And Parham Maghsoodloo. Andy Woodward is nearly 2600 and he's 15. Here's another sleeper to win the entire tournament. Andy Woodward can win the tournament, even though he has 6.5 points. More on that later. Vaishali, by the way, on the women's side, this is a really, really wild women's bracket. Remember, we have Katerina Lagno, who's crushing the tournament. Yushin Song from China. We have, obviously, Vaishali, Bibisara Osobayeva, and Tan Zhongyi. There are several candidates for first place. And in this position, Vaishali plays a move I have never seen. Ever. Literally never. White has played c4, a4, queen f3, bishop e3, c3, bishop e2, g4, queen d3, bishop d3, b4, bishop d2, h4, f4, and now rook g1. Rook g1 from Vaishali. Insane. Black goes here, and she goes g4. Completely unbelievable preparation. Like, what on earth even is this? And now, just use this, right? We're not going to checkmate anybody. We're just going to use the G pawn as a pressuring mechanism, restricting the light squared bishop, restricting potential future pawns. Obviously, the prep isn't what's going to win us this game anymore. It's just rooks and bishops, but that side of the board is there for the pressure. F6. Vachier-Lagrave blundering here. Maybe misevaluating just how strong Black's defenses are, but Maghsoodloo has to play all the right moves, and she is doing it for a little while. She goes for the counterplay correctly, and she's actually doing a great job, but she starts slipping up a bit in time trouble. She has 3 minutes on the clock. B3, Vachier-Lagrave rook E1, rook H5. It still looks like Black's position is solid in the middle of the board, but this is a mistake. Why is it a mistake? Not because of this, but because of rook H4, and if rook E5, Black is completely stuck. So Black is just stuck in that position, and very slowly you will win the bishop. But she goes here, and now rook G5, and she goes for counterplay on G2, but comes back to defend it. Now look at this position. So we have the same position. Black doesn't have a move. Black can't move the rook anywhere. Black can't move the king or the bishop. Rook E8, D7. It looks like, what's the idea? Rook D3. That's the idea. And hidden in this is a sacrifice. Takes, rook E3, rook E7. Vachier-Lagrave getting the job done. Let's do a standings update. Every other game was a draw here, but it's still absolutely crazy what can happen. So we have Vachier-Lagrave back in the lead with Lagno. They lead the tournament by half a point. They've played each other. On board one, you have Tan Zhongyi, a 7-pointer, trying to play Vachier-Lagrave, who has 7.5. Lagno with white, 7.5 against Fatalieva. If she makes a draw, she probably clinches a spot. Right? Vachier-Lagrave, obviously a win for them, also clinches a spot. The 7s have to win. There is even a 6.5 playing a 7.5, because they've all played each other. Crush has 6.5. She can play the role of spoiler. So, all scrambled all over the place. The best chances are obviously still with Vachier-Lagrave and Lagno. Now, nothing is clear for the gentleman. By the way, side note, we didn't take a look at Gukesh this round. He got back to his winning ways, but I wanted to leave him alone for a little bit. I felt like he was milked enough during the recap, but he did win against Sargsyan. He won a nice game. And Divya, yesterday, had a heartbreaking loss. She was in an equal position against 26-30. Wow. Shugirov used to be 2,700. But today she drew against Indic, who's 2,650. So Divya continues her great run. Now here it's chaos. So in the 11th round of the tournament, can I refresh this? Do we get better? No, the pairings are not here. Whatever, I'll show them to you. Bluebaum, Firouzja, Giri, Niemann, Keymer. Now, there is a channel that is covering all of this on Twitter. So I'm gonna, before we go, stay here for just a second. I'm going to go to the most hilarious and goofy website in all of the world of chess, which is called Chess Results. And on the Chess Results page, these are the pairings. Okay, Bluebaum has white against Firouzja. Giri has white against Niemann. Erigaisi from 6.5 floats up to play against Keymer. Here's the thing. Of the people that have 6.5 points and could potentially spoil everything at the top, only Abhimanyu Mishra and Andy Woodward can play spoiler. Why? Because the way that the tiebreak system works in chess is the average rating of the people that you have played against. And look at the tiebreaks. Bluebaum has a monster tiebreak. He has a very, very high tiebreak. But Abhimanyu Mishra, who is right here, has by far the highest tiebreak of the 6.5 because his average ratings of his opponents are 27-30. If Abhimanyu wins and everybody in the 7 points makes a draw, Abhimanyu Mishra could make the freaking candidates, which is crazy. In fact, I think he would make the candidates. He's straight up guaranteed a candidate spot if everybody else makes a draw. So everybody else has to play for a win. Giri, Niemann have to play for a win. Okay? The board one pairing of Bluebaum with white versus Firouzja with black, I think they have to play for a win. I actually think they do. Bluebaum probably is safe because he has the highest tiebreaks. Everybody else needs to win. Woodward with 6.5 could also, if he beats Yu Yangyi, could maybe sneak in because, again, These are your tiebreaks. Look at these tiebreaks. Shout out to this account, Chess Numbers India, that's pulling all of this. Bluebaum 2695 has a very, very high tiebreak. Woodward 2686. So if Woodward wins, nobody else from the 7 and everybody else in the 7s makes a draw. Andy Woodward is going to the candidates. Can you imagine? This is so wild. This is so wild. Obviously, if a 7 wins, they guarantee themselves a spot. Maybe. They might guarantee themselves a spot. Because if one of these guys wins and one of these guys wins and Keymer wins, no, only 2 of them make it. So these are your standings, right? Keymer has the worst tiebreak. So Vincent is not doing very well. But Giri also doesn't have a particularly great tiebreak, right? And Niemann also doesn't have a particularly great tiebreak. Firouzja and Bluebaum do because they've been playing higher rated opposition. Unbelievable scenes. We are 1 game away from Hans Niemann potentially being in the candidates, Vincent Keymer being in the first candidates, Matthias Bluebaum being in his first candidates, and maybe Abhimanyu Mishra and Andy Woodward from the USA. That's all I have for you today. Look forward to the recap tomorrow and get out of here.